In the name of God, who creates us, redeems us, and gives us new life. Amen. Beware that no one leads you astray. That's a perfect caveat as we continue to listen to the field of hopefuls for the office of the President of the United States. Republicans are firmly entrenched in what they believe. Democrats have dug their heels in just as much. But what made sense to us yesterday may give us pause today. The 1940 hymnal has a hymn that says it all to me. Paraphrasing, at some point to all of us comes the moment to decide. In our battle of truth versus falsehood, or for the good or evil side. New occasions teach new duties. Time makes ancient good uncouth. In other words, a behavior which may have seemed like the right thing to do at one time, we now know is wrong. Slavery, sexism, child labor, and so many other things we took for granted years ago have no place in our world today. New information comes to us almost hourly on the news about every conceivable issue. Commentators are passionate about their particular cause. Gun control, same-gender marriage, Planned Parenthood, the death penalty, climate change, mental illness, drug addiction. Many folks are very sure that they have the right answers. Others are so overwhelmed that they don't know what to believe, whom to trust. In Jesus' time, the issues may have been different, but the passion and attitudes of those who claimed to know exactly what God wanted were the same as we see today. People were told that they must obey the letter of the law. Jesus and his disciples knew that sometimes that was not the compassionate, the humane thing to do. That was clear when he healed on the Sabbath. Obey the strict law or let someone continue to suffer. Jesus didn't have to think twice about that. It can be difficult for us sometimes to discern God's will from what we want. And even if we really know in our hearts which is which, our will may be stronger. Or we may allow ourselves to be swayed by someone who has gained power deceptively, or one who has legitimately obtained authority. It helps to know the source of their information. With Jesus, we have no doubts. His authority came from God. Beware that no one leads you astray. The end of this gospel reading isn't as easy to understand. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed, the reading says. Seriously? The threat of danger on our soil is with us constantly, and it does give me cause for alarm. Yet, I continue to live my life. I travel anywhere I choose, in my own country and pretty much any other country. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. That has been true for as long as I can remember and is still true. And sadly, I see no end to the many conflicts. There will be earthquakes in various places. Afghanistan recently had a major earthquake, with hundreds dead and thousands injured and displaced. And we hear there will be famines. Again, there are untold numbers starving worldwide. What are we to do? What are we to learn from today's gospel message? Each of us may come to a different conclusion. What comes to my mind is our baptismal covenant. Certainly, there are some things we have no control over, such as earthquakes. But we do have complete control over whether we keep the promises that we made in our baptismal covenant or not. And there is a lot there to promise. The hope is that these promises will become a way of life. God knows that we are not perfect, but there is a safety net. After each promise, we say, I will with God's help. That doesn't let us off the hook by any means, but it does remind us that we are not alone. When I say the phrase, will you seek and serve Christ in all persons, I think of Bill, who was known as the Hermit of Chestnut Hill. He had a family, but he chose to be homeless. He was filthy and smelled awful. I can remember going into a CVS at one time, and as soon as I entered, I knew he was there. Loving our neighbor as ourselves, that's a tough one sometimes. And the promise about resisting evil, doesn't that our gospel lesson touch on that one too? Temptation is all around us. Obeying the letter of the law. I would never intentionally kill or injure someone, but I certainly admit to exceeding the speed limit if it is safe to do so. Obeying the spirit of the law, if you will. And the last promise always brings tears to my eyes. Will you strive for justice and peace among all people and respect the dignity of every human being? Honestly, to me, that's a 24/7 full-time job. I'm very clear in my feelings about certain issues, such as the death penalty, war, and immigration. I suspect most of you know where you stand as well. We may agree, we may differ. To me, the important thing is to give issues careful and prayerful thought. I used to think that the phrase, "What would Jesus do?" was just a catchy phrase suitable for bumper stickers. Then I gave it serious thought. Indeed, what would Jesus do in situations that I was uncertain about? Beware that no one leads you astray. I tend to get caught up in the moment. Perhaps some of you do too. Especially at this time of year when all the environmental and animal rights groups are asking me for money, I have to be careful about how to distribute that money. I try not to look at the pictures they send because I know that they will tug at my heartstrings. I use the Better Business Bureau's Wise Giving Guide and give only to those charities which meet all of their 20 standards for accountability. If an organization is especially good at presenting their needs, I immediately want to be part of it. If they're really good at it, I want to be president or at least head of a committee. But being caught up in the emotion of it, instead of doing some research, is not responsible on my part. Beware that no one leads you astray. When Jesus tells us that, he is perhaps telling us to think before we act, especially if we are prone to act impulsively. If we really try to love one another, we are less likely to say hurtful things. Respecting the dignity of every human being means that we will not allow racist or sexist jokes to be told in our presence. If a television program seems to go against what we stand for as Christians, we will notify the network to get it off the air. We can be a pretty powerful force when we stand up for something we believe in. Jesus' teachings are our guidelines, and we cannot be led astray if we follow them. When we're ordained to the priesthood, we make promises. And at the end, the bishop says, "May the Lord, who has given you the will to do these things, give you the grace and power to perform them." May that be our prayer as well. Amen.